Welcome back to the Cyber Resilience Brief, a Safe Breach podcast. This time on video. I'm your host, Tova Dvorin, and joining me as always is our offensive cybersecurity engineer and Europe lead, and my favorite co-host, Adrian Culley. Adrian, great to have you.
Always a pleasure, Tova. We've got a very critical topic today.
We do. Today, we're dissecting the Joint Advisory AR 25338A, published by CISA, the NSA, and the Canadian Cyber Centre on December 4th, 2025. And this advisory details a sophisticated threat they've named BRICKSTORM. Now, if you're familiar with the podcast, we did give you advance notice about BRICKSTORM back in episode 24. It's about 2 months ago from the date of this recording, so around October 12th. If you want to listen to that episode, by all means, pause here, go back and listen to it. It's worth a listen. But today we're going to give you some critical updates. Adrian, what are the executive updates on this one?
So, Tova, the updated CISA advisory paints a very clear but very worrying picture. The People's Republic of China, the Ministry of State Security, and some overlap with the People's Liberation Army, state-sponsored cyber actors are using BRICKSTORM malware for long-term persistence. We talked about this back in October, about living in the blind spot, being where you can't be found, and we've talked about this also in our CRINC forthcoming update across all of these threat actors, that the Chinese characteristic of operation is getting in and then dwelling, sitting there, waiting, very patient, which implies that their real purpose is future sabotage. They're not financially driven. They're not necessarily data exfiltration driven. It's not smash and grab. It's about deep, stealthy access maintained for well over a year. And as we mentioned back in October, we saw access from China as far back as April 24 to September of this year.
Wow. And who is the prime target this time?
It's primarily government services and utilities and the information technology sectors. And what makes this stand out is the focus. BRICKSTORM is a sophisticated backdoor primarily targeting VMware vSphere environments, specifically vCenter and ESXi servers. This is an attack at the very core of a modern data center, the virtualization.
Indeed, attacking the hypervisor is a huge escalation. Adrian, can you break down what BRICKSTORM is and what it does once it's inside?
Absolutely. At its core, BRICKSTORM is a custom, Go-based, executable, and linkable format, or ELF, very relative to the time of year. Nothing to do with the movie, unfortunately. It's an executable, linkable format ELF, new type of ELF. It's designed for stealthy long-term persistence and secure command and control, or C2. There are a few key elements to its sophistication. First, persistence, as we've touched upon. BRICKSTORM has a self-watching function. If it's disrupted, it automatically reinstalls and restarts itself, essentially ensuring it's running correctly 24/7. We talk with customers all the time about tampering and disruption and disabling of your security controls that we're validating. We're seeing here a fairly advanced threat actor where they built their own anti-tamper mechanism into BRICKSTORM. It's expecting you to try and remove it, and it's what's doing is it's modifying critical system files, like the init file in etc/sysconfig on the vSphere systems, to execute itself during boot up. If you're not aware of this, you think you've removed it, it reinstalls on the next boot up. Second, it's the command and control channel. This is where they really blend in. BRICKSTORM uses multiple layers of encryption, think HTTPS, WebSockets, and even nested TLS, transport layer security. Crucially, it leverages DNS over HTTPS, DOH, and mimics legitimate web server functionality to hide its communications amongst legitimate network traffic. You're literally looking for a needle in a haystack made of needles.
Wow. So it's not just running, it's actively hiding its communications and blending in with the noise. But it sounds more than that, like it's a hydra. It's a monster with multiple heads. You try to remove it, it will just come back, and then it makes itself even more difficult to find. So what advantage does this give the threat actor, and how do we go about stopping it?
Advantage is exactly what it's about, Tova. It's full control is what they're seeking and gaining. It grants interactive shell access and allows the actors to browse, upload, download, and manipulate files. Many samples act as a SOX proxy as well, which is invaluable for facilitating lateral movement and tunneling deeper into the network. Let's look at the attack path detailed in the CISA report from an incident response case study. This shows exactly what we need to be defending against. The initial access vector isn't detailed in the report, but the actors first compromised a web server in the DMZ using a web shell. From there, they moved laterally using stolen service account credentials and protocols like remote desktop protocol and SMB messaging broadcasting. They hit the jackpot by compromising domain controllers, copying the Active Directory database, NTDS DLT, and getting keys from an ADFS server.
Right, and that ultimately gives them high-level credentials, but where do they pivot from there?
So very specifically, by attacking a copy, they're making sure you get no alerts and no notification that they've stolen these credentials. What this then gives them access to is the VMware vCenter server, and this is really the critical step at the heart of the attack and the persistence. Once they control vCenter, they control the hypervisor. This gives them the ability to perform two highly damaging actions. First, steal cloned VM snapshots for credential extraction, as I just mentioned, and second, create hidden rogue virtual machines. This is a next-level persistence and espionage platform. If they can plant a new hidden VM and tunnel traffic through it, they have an invisible, persistent beachhead deep inside your network. Again, living off the blind spot. How are you validating and guarding and controlling these VMware instances when you don't even know they exist? This is the ultimate implication for virtualization security. So Tova, the immediate challenge for our customers is, are my controls effective against this precise attack chain? This is where breach and attack simulation and continuous advanced red teaming comes in, and it becomes non-negotiable. You cannot wait for a red team exercise to validate these controls. You need continuous automated validation of the specific tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs, outlined in the BRICKSTORM report.
So, how does an adversarial exposure validation platform like ours specifically model a BRICKSTORM threat?
So we can break it down by TTP. First, we've got persistence validation. Can we simulate the malware modifying the path environment variable or boot-up scripts, like etc sysconfig init? BAS must execute these attempts to ensure endpoint detection and response, or integrity monitoring solutions flag this highly sophisticated behavior. Secondly, C2 validation. We simulate the multiple layer C2. This means testing DOH encrypted beacons and nested TLS communications to confirm that advanced network detection and response, NDR, or proxy inspection tools are not being fooled by these traffic mimicking techniques. Again, they're hiding amongst the noise. Thirdly, lateral movement validation. BAS will automatically test if compromised credentials used on the web server can be leveraged to move laterally via RDP or SMB to high-value targets like domain controllers and vCenter, validating the effectiveness of network segmentation and least privilege principles. And fourthly, virtualization post-exploitation. We need to test for post-exploitation activities. The CISA report mentions tools like CrowdStrike's Virtual Ghost, and that very nice script that will identify unregistered VMware VMs for you. Breach and attack simulation simulates the creation and use of rogue VMs to ensure that the security teams logging and monitoring the vCenter platform is actually effective at detecting this hypervisor level abuse. The process moves security teams from thinking they're protected to knowing exactly which controls failed, which is at the core of cyber resilience.
Okay, let's look at the CISA NSA and Cyber Center mitigations. How does Safe Breaches platform align with these?
So the official guidance is pretty specific and spot on, really. First of all, upgrade your VMware vSphere servers to the latest version. Standard advice, but easy to overlook in a busy production environment. Secondly, harden your VMware vSphere environments using VMware's guidance. Thirdly, ensure proper network segmentation restricts traffic from the DMZ to the internal network. Micro-segmentation. Zero trust, but then validate that zero trust. As we've discussed previously, in embracing and adopting zero trust, the key thing that gets overlooked is you must, by definition, have zero trust in zero trust itself. The challenge is the gap between policy and reality. You can implement all these steps, but how do you confirm they worked? That's the breach and attack simulation value proposition. For example, after hardening vCenter, you use BAS to simulate the modification of the init file again. If the simulation fails, meaning the EDR blocked it, you've verified the control is effective. If the simulation succeeds, you've found the gap in your hardening before an attacker does. BAS ensures the CISA mitigations have teeth in your environment. The BRICKSTORM advisory is a wake-up call, Tova. It confirms that high-value organisations are facing well-resourced, patient, state-sponsored actions whose goal is long-term espionage via the most privileged layer of the network, the hypervisor. That they're living in the blind spot.
Yeah, and obviously, I think the key takeaway for security teams is very simply, if you don't have a BAS platform already, go ahead and get yourself a BAS platform. It will help you mitigate all of these threats and keep an eye out for those blind spots you're missing. But what are some other key takeaways for security teams?
So it's also an opportunity, Tova, to shift from a reactive compliance-focused security posture to one of continuous proactive validation. Your endpoint controls, network segmentation, vCenter hardening policies are great on paper, but breach and attack simulation, continuous automated red teaming, adversary exposure validation, continuous threat exposure management are the ways to verify that your defensive work against complicated threats and sophisticated threats like BRICKSTORM. Don't wait for that instant response. Validate your resilience today.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a powerful message, Adrian. Thank you so much for breaking down this critical advisory for us and showing us the path to verified cyber resilience and a realistic one.
My pleasure, Tova. Stay safe, everyone.
And thank you, dear listeners, for tuning into the Cyber Resilience Brief. Until next time, stay safe with SafeBreach. The Cyber Resilience Brief is a SafeBreach podcast. Executive produced by Tova Dvorin and Adrian Culley. Sound provided by Adobe Music. Editing done with Adobe Podcasts. Distribution and tracking provided by Podbean. If you enjoy the podcast and would like to learn more, please check us out at www.safebreach.com. SAFEBREACH.com. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.